Welcome to the Greenville City Council Candidate Forums. This forum is a joint production of Interbanks Media and the Daily Reflector. Please watch and listen to the candidates as they discuss issues pertinent to voters in the city of Greenville. Here is your host for this Greenville Candidate Forum, Bobby Burns, Executive Editor of the Daily Reflector.
Hello, and welcome to the Greenville City Council Forums brought to you by the Daily Reflector and Interbanks Media. This session features the candidates for the at-large seat on the council, Bell and Portia Willis. All registered voters in the city can cast a ballot in this race. The session is scheduled for 30 minutes. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to answer questions. We will alternate which candidate answers first. Candidates will have 1 minute for an opening statement and up to 2 minutes to close. I will be asking the questions, and my colleague Mary Doreen will be keeping time. We tossed a coin to determine which candidate gets the last word. With that, I want to thank both candidates for their participation, and we'll start off with an opening statement from candidate Bell. Candidate Willis.
No problem. Thank you. And thank you to the organizers of this opportunity, the Reflector and IBX Media. So my name is Portia Willis, and I am your current Greenville City Council member at large, elected in 2023. I am a lifelong resident. I am a wife, a mother, a small business owner, and an entrepreneur, and a leader within our community. Our governance for the city of Greenville is comprised of a mayor and a council governance. So we have our mayor, Mayor P.J. Connolly. We're represented by 5 different districts and an at-large representative. So us 7 make up your representation and, like I said, governance for the city. With my time on council, I've been able to lead in a way that is shown in showing up for people and being present in our community, being able to promote real change and real results, and being able to lead with people in mind. That's my idea of common sense leadership and public service, leadership and service to our community. It's been my honor to serve, and it's my pleasure to be able to continue to do so. Thank you.
Mr. Bell.
Thank you very much for having me here tonight, Bobby. I appreciate Interbanks Media and the Daily Reflector hosting us. Portia, thank you very much for participating in this and also accommodating my tough schedule. I certainly appreciate it. Just want to start this off by acknowledging that I think both candidates in this race are great people, and I hope that you feel the same way about me. I think that you're in it for the right reasons, and we just may have a difference of opinions in how to get things done, and that's okay. I think it's important for us to be here having healthy dialogue about the decisions that our city faces and how we're going to move forward as a city. And so I certainly appreciate this opportunity to do so. My name is Bell. I'm a candidate for the Greenville City Council at large seat. I spent 6 years serving on the Greenville City Council, 2 as a representative in District 3, and then 1 as a candidate for at large, and served in that seat for 2 years and 1 term. I have a record of low taxes, job creation, and investing heavily in infrastructure. I was a candidate and a person who served on the council that wasn't afraid to roll up their sleeves, get out in the field and work and clean up our community and serve not just from behind the dais, but also in the community. And so I look forward to getting an opportunity to serve again. Thank you very much for having us here.
Okay. I'm going to ask Ms. Willis the first question. North Carolina has experienced a boom in data center development as the use of artificial intelligence grows. Greenville restricts such development to industrial zoning areas, requires it to be 3,400 feet from homes and schools, and limits noise levels to 30 decibels, the sound of a whisper. Should the city change its regulations to better promote data center development? Why or why not? What other types of industry should the city encourage, and how should we do it?
Well, the short answer is I feel like that the ordinance that we have in place is appropriate, and I'll tell you why. When that came to us earlier in my term, these are the things that we considered: the nature of the business, community concerns, the day-to-day operations of the business, the noise pollution that was a concern for our citizens, as well as these processing centers being in areas that were historically underrepresented and underrepresented in the past. And so the question is, do we want data processing centers near residential areas. And we as a council decided, no, we don't want that. So we had to come up with parameters that we could live with. And we were able to come up with things that took into account distance to residential areas and noise restrictions and hours of operation. Like I said, we're thinking to ourselves, if this was in our backyard, how would we feel about it? The current ordinance allows for different data processing centers to be at different places within the city, but it's taking into account these different things. That's how we're governing and having a balance between the needs of the citizens and business interests. We have been proponents, of business in Greenville, and we've seen the development and we've seen the announcement of big developments or business opportunities like Nipro and like Boviet. So those are the things I feel like we should advocate as a city to promote in terms of business growth and economic development.
Thank you. Mr. Bell, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
North Carolina is experiencing a boom in data center development as the use of artificial intelligence grows. Greenville restricts such development to industrial zoning areas, requires it to be 30 feet from homes and schools, and limits the noise to 30 decibels, which is the sound of a whisper. Should the city change its regulations to better promote data center development? Why or why not? And what other types of industry should the city encourage? And how should we do it?
Yeah, so I think the ordinance that's currently on the books is actually reasonable. We dealt with it a little bit in my time on council. It was kind of there towards the last term. And it's a new industry, right? It's a part of the 21st century in an emerging economy. And so it's important to be able to be competitive in those spaces and make sure that we don't deter any investment from those sectors. But it is also important, I agree with Councilmember Willis, it's important to make sure that we protect neighborhoods, protect schools, and make sure that, when those facilities come to town, it's not to the detriment of our citizens. So I think that's an area that we could agree on. It's a reasonable ordinance, and I would have supported it.
Okay. What other types of industry should the city encourage, and how should we do it?
Yeah, so I think we, with the ENC Alliance, which was formed in my first term on the Greenville City Council and is still serving today, it's a great private-public partnership, and we've had some success recruiting across various industries. We've got a great medical and pharmaceutical industry here in Greenville. We've got a great healthcare industry. Obviously, education is really strong here. I think an area that we should really focus on moving forward is small business and entrepreneurship. I've got a proposal on my website, bellforgvl.com, that proposes the city taking a portion of budget and also working with private industry to support the Miller School of Entrepreneurship to try and really incubate those entrepreneurs that are on campus at East Carolina University and to help bring them or keep them in town and finally, once and for all, put a clog on the brain drain that we've had in the city for a really long time. I think if we can do that, small business, entrepreneurship, and the creator space is something that's really going to continue to grow in the United States. And I think North Carolina can lead the way. Greenville can lead the way because of our low cost of living and the ability for an entrepreneur to get off the ground really quickly. Thank you.
Excellent. The second question goes to you, Mr. Bell. You opposed the lawsuit against Camping World to force the company to pay fines for violating the city's rules for displaying non-commercial flags and to make it follow those rules. How should the city council address the violation? What signal does capitulating to Camping World send to other businesses and individuals who may want to ignore city ordinances and laws?
Was there a space specifically that you're pulling that information from for me going against that?
I might be wrong. Tell me if I am.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with me ever being quoted or taking a public stance on that, but I am happy to offer some thoughts
Please
right
do.
now.
I apologize. I thought I remembered
yeah,
reading that in your announcement.
No, I've addressed it briefly.
Okay.
But so
please start the time at.
Yep. So, what I think we could have done as a city council differently and as a city government is approach Camping World. Sometimes there are issues that I believe don't necessarily have to make it into the public square. Diplomacy behind closed doors for a discussion about how we can keep a sound discussion moving forward without getting the law involved, I think would have been a reasonable way to handle it. I do think that Mr. Lemonis and his business, a lot of people allege that he wanted to get a media story and marketing out of the case that took place at our Camping World and really across the country. And I think a way to avoid that would have been to have had a private discussion and say, hey, you're in violation. We'd like to find a way to come to an agreement here. It's the American flag. Everybody wants the American flag to fly. I would think most people do. And so finding a way to allow it to continue to fly and an amicable, solution for everybody to come to, I think would have been the right way to go about it. I would not personally have supported tax dollars going towards a lawsuit. There's obviously differences of opinion there between my opponent and I, and that's fine. But that's the way that I would have wanted to see it handled.
Okay. Ms. Willis, you are one of 4 council members who supported filing a lawsuit against Camping World to force the company to pay fines for violating the city's rules for displaying non-commercial flags and to make it follow those rules. Do you still believe that was the right choice? Please explain your answer.
Yes, I do. And if I had the opportunity to make the decision again today, I would make the same decision. Just want to lay some groundwork. Here's what we know. Camping World submitted a permit to fly a flagpole that was a certain height and a flag that was a certain size flag. Instead, they installed something that was much higher and way bigger. Instead of coming into compliance and having an amicable conversation, as my opponent suggests, he has been unwilling to work with us. And that plays right into that narrative and the fact that he has done this around the country and has sought to polarize our community as an advertisement ploy. He's been in total disregard of our ordinances and has refused to comply to them. And then seeks to offer $50,000 to our children's hospital, and for what in return? To me, that's the definition of quid pro quo, which is illegal, and that's not something I would stand for. So we're left with, what do we do as a council? The law provides, the remedy that it provides is to pursue a lawsuit, so that's what we've done. The lawsuit has been currently paused or stayed at the moment because our state legislator has determined to get involved. And because that law could prohibit any municipalities in the state of North Carolina from flying a North Carolina flag or a United States flag, then we have paused our lawsuit until the state makes their decision or makes it a law. I believe that the state should have the right of preemption over local government, but this was not a situation where they needed to get involved. There we are. There we have it. And today, unfortunately, it's about the flag, but tomorrow, what could it be? It's a very slippery slope. And we stand for holding companies and anyone else accountable for our city ordinances. Right is still right, and wrong is still wrong.
Okay, Ms. Willis, question 3 goes to you.
Okay.
The City Council in June lowered the city property tax rate to 39.54 cents per $100 of value, the lowest rate that the city has had in 20 years. Still, it was a little more than 2 cents higher than the revenue neutral rate of 36.85 cents. Explain why you supported the higher rate.
Okay, so you know your facts, Bobby. So in 2004, we were at a tax rate of 4.95 cents, and the revenue neutral rate was suggested at 36 cents. We chose the higher adopted rate, which was the 2.69 cent higher than the revenue neutral rate. The question we had to ask ourselves was, what do we have before us that we could use these tax dollars to pay for? And our city manager was able to give us a list, which I'll give in just a second. But I'm so glad that you mentioned about the rate that we have, because it is lower than Winterville, it's lower than Ayden, it's lower than Farmville. Regionally, it's lower than New Bern, it's lower than Wilson, it's lower than Rocky Mount, and it's lower than Wilmington, Asheville, and Fayetteville, which are considered our peer cities. So what did we use that 2.69 cent to go toward? We used it for fire and rescue positions. We used it for fleet maintenance operations, public works operations, pavement management programs. We used it for public safety operations and ADA programming. We hired a sustainability coordinator. We hired a public works locator and a community engagement person. And we put some money in our 401k. So I am trying to figure out, what is the argument? We lowered taxes and we're able to do all of these things. I know my opponent is a proponent of increasing the tax base, but what I find is that when we do that and we put so much stock in the tax base, then we don't have the ability to advocate on behalf of citizens and development that may impact their daily lived experiences. So if we're so heavily dependent on the tax base, then we lose that discretion to be able to serve our citizens in the way they elected us to do so.
Mr. Bell, would you like me to repeat the question? The City Council in June lowered the city property tax rate to 39.54 cents per $100 of value, the lowest rate the city has had in 20 years. Still, it was a little more than 2 cents higher than the revenue neutral rate of 36.85 cents. Explain your position on this. Would you have kept the rate as at revenue neutral, or would you have just set it where it was, where they set it?
Yeah, I certainly appreciate that question, and I think it's a really important one. And for me, it's it's one of the most important things about my campaign platform. I've got 3 young children, and we've experienced pretty high record inflation over the last 4 years. Insurance rates are going through the roof because of the high risk in the eastern part of North Carolina because of hurricanes and natural disasters. Hurricane Helene in the western part of the state has not helped things. And so we're seeing rising costs across the board. And I would have personally supported revenue neutral. It would have maintained city services at what we were currently offering, and I feel it was a very strong offering. But what I also think we can do to try and bolster our tax base and tax revenues is to, one, open up planning and zoning meetings again. We had 4 months in a row with no planning and zoning meetings. There's only been, in the last 10 years, a handful of meetings that were canceled, and they were not for lack of agenda items like these were canceled for. It was for lack of a quorum, not having enough committee members available to meet. And then I think ways that we can also support our budget needs is, developing better relationships with our state legislators. And I think we both can probably agree that developing those relationships is probably a great thing for all residents in Greenville. We were able to get the build grant for the city, and that was really important. We were able to get a little bit of money for the town culvert project, or the town bulkhead project at Town Commons. And those are great wins for our city, but I think we can continue to focus on those relationships, not just at the state level, but at the federal level. And if we do that, I think we can lessen the burden on taxpayers. And so instead of trying to necessarily always cut services, I think it's a better way to find additional funding sources that we could bring to our city, lessen the burden on taxpayers.
Okay. Question 4 comes to you, Mr. Bell. Greenville is growing rapidly. The council is routinely challenged by requests from developers that conflict with the needs and desires of existing and longtime residents. How will you balance demands for residential and commercial growth, especially with repeated concerns about traffic noise, and congestion?
Yeah, so that's like a multifaceted issue there, right? There's so many different ways to dissect that. So I think like a few core things we could focus on is, rather than continuing to grow our city outward and make services stretch even further, I think focusing on infill development and redevelopment would be a really great use of space within our city. It allows us to utilize existing utility infrastructure and makes it where we're not spreading police and fire resources and EMS resources so far. I also think it would be really important for us to continue focusing on having zoning ordinances that allow for additional uses. I believe that like accessory dwelling units would be a really strong addition to our city. For folks who aren't necessarily familiar with that term, that would be like adding a secondary living unit on the back of your property, like a mother-in-law suite or a guest house, to allow for growing families, aging population, which our country is experiencing a pretty significant gain in the aging population, and so it would allow us to have more infill within our cities and fill those spaces with useful spaces rather than growing the city outward.
Excellent. Ms. Willis?
Yes, if you don't mind repeating the question.
I don't mind at all. Greenville is growing rapidly. The council is routinely challenged by requests from developers that conflict with the needs and desires of existing and longtime residents. How will you balance demands for residential and commercial growth, especially with repeated concerns about traffic noise, and congestion?
Yes. So that is what we deal with day in and day out with our citizens, is weighing and balancing the needs of our citizens and how our decisions affect their daily lived experiences and how growth impacts their daily lived experiences and the growth that we're seeing and the excitement of the growth that we're seeing. And I think what we have to consider is that we have so many different projects that are waiting to be done by the Department of Transportation. We have about $500 to $600,000 worth of projects that we're waiting on that have been 10 years in the waiting from DOT that we've got to get moving. And that goes back to what former council member Bell mentioned about those relationships with our state legislator. I would have loved to have seen, energy into that as opposed to the Camping World situation. But we've got projects that need to be done within our city that will help our growth. That is the key. How can we grow our infrastructure to be able to support the growth? That's going to determine our economic development. And I also want to see the promotion of our airport and the growth of our airport. I think that's a key to our region. But our infrastructure is going to be key in the next 5, 10, 15 years in the growth of Greenville.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. This is question 5, and it goes to you, Ms. Willis. The council is scheduled to vote soon on a unified development ordinance.
Mhm.
In response to public input, the UDO includes requirements meant to expand the city's tree canopy.
Mhm.
Do you support the requirements? Should the city do more or less when it comes to protecting trees?
So I remember at a council meeting in public comment, someone mentioning that Greenville only has about 34% tree canopy currently. And it got me thinking and riding around. And when I'd go to a parking lot and try to find a tree to park under to go into a place of business or a store, I'm thinking, you know what, we don't have that many trees around here. So I can see, I can visually see it. I can understand the advocacy for it. And that's something we take into account with our UDO. It's all about how we balance development and the environment, care for our environment. And we have a council that is sensitive to that and takes it into account. What I've seen is that over the last few years, the council has been heavily weighted toward development, and we're bringing that pendulum back to the middle to balance and keeping everyone in mind. And the thing that I find to be most impactful is that through this UDO process, people have felt heard. We had over 800 people to give their feedback in this process. They felt heard, and they feel like they have a council that listens to them. Even if in the end they don't get everything that they'd like to see in the UDO, they know that we've listened, and they know that we've taken into account what it is that they'd like to see in their community. The UDO is supposed to be a illustration of the direction that the community is going in. So we've listened, we're taking things into account, but we are making sure that we're having that balance between environment and development. And I think that should be our responsibility as council members.
Okay, Mr. Bell, this comes to you now. The council is scheduled to vote soon on a unified development ordinance. In response to public input, the UDO includes requirements meant to expand the city's tree canopy. Do you support the requirements? Should the city do more or less when it comes to protecting trees?
Yeah, I think the city should do everything they can to protect the environment in general. If we have the ability to take development proposals into consideration that can continue to help beautify but also grow our city at the same time, I think we should do that. Growing up in Wilmington, I remember I went back in college after Hurricane Florence, and just so many trees in that city were wiped out as a result of that storm. And it really made me, growing up, Wilmington was such a beautiful place, and went back after that storm and it looked like a concrete jungle. And so it was really, really tough to see that. And it's eye-opening, how tree loss can actually change a community and the beautification of a community. I think you have to take it a step further than just, a vote, but also lead personally and get involved with organizations like Relief and Frogs, Friends of Greenville Greenways, finding those ways to actually get in and help restore the canopy and not just protect it. I think are really important. And they do a great job at Relief with planting trees every single year to try and help restore that canopy. And I've been proud to be a part of that development.
Thank you. All right, question 6. And it goes to you, Mr. Bell. The council has worked to change zoning rules to allow more drinking establishments to open downtown. The Bar 2022 rules eliminate the requirement that new bars be at least 500 feet from existing bars, as long as new bars are no more than 2,000 square feet in size and comply with several other rules. Should the square footage requirement be increased to encourage more business? Should the rules be expanded citywide? What are the pros and cons?
That's a sensitive subject, as I learned in my last term on the city council. And I led that discussion and proposed it because, representing all citizens, but being a young professional myself, I heard quite frequently from young professionals in the city that they just didn't feel like there was a place for them to be entertained on weekends if they wanted to go out and have a cocktail or just have a night out socializing. Some people, there's a big movement in our country right now of being sober. Some people just want to go out and be social. And I do think that readdressing it, the council doing that, is a good idea. We started with 2,000 square feet so that we had a small measured approach and something that was controllable and didn't get out of hand really quickly. It's had an issue in the past with, too many bars that were too large and had too many people in them. And so I think starting small was a good first step. I'm glad to see that the discussion is continuing even without me up there. And I really hope that we're able to continue to take those measured steps. I personally would support expanding it now. We've only had one cocktail bar open, under this new rule, and that bar is still actually not open. They're investing a ton of money into that business. And so, I think that to get it, churning just a little bit better, we'd probably be better off, maybe jumping to about 3,000 square feet. If you look at most of the buildings available downtown, there were only so many that would even fit the 2,000 square foot and under requirement. 3,000, 3,500 opens it up to a good bit more, but still keeps control on it. And so I think that's what I would probably support.
Citywide?
Citywide, I do think there is an opportunity to have some more entertainment areas within our city. I hear from constituents all the time and just people in conversation that they'd like to see other areas outside of our downtown, so I would support.
Okay. Ms. Willis, same question to you. The council has worked to change zoning rules to allow more drinking establishments to open downtown. The Bar 2022 rules eliminate the requirement that new bars be at least 500 feet from existing bars as long as the new bars are no more than 2,000 square feet in size and comply with other rules. Should the square footage requirement be increased to encourage more business downtown? Should the rules be expanded citywide? What are the pros and cons?
Short answer, yes and yes. So this conversation started with a small business owner downtown reaching out to us and wanting to revisit Bar 2022. And so we asked our city manager if he would bring it back to a workshop to bring us up to speed because Bar 2022 was put in place before we were on council. So we were able to learn about the history of it, the impacts of it, and then what our options were. And so in being able to talk with my fellow council members and other constituents, I have landed on the fact that I think it would be a reasonable request. I myself, I'm personally not a drinker. And so one of the things I like about being on council is there are others who have that niche or have more information about that particular subject matter who are able to share the benefits and what they're seeing downtown and what's happening in addition to the business owners who have reached out. And so based on the information I've been able to gather and our city manager was able to formulate a briefing for us and to explain the process just yesterday, actually, I would be in favor of it. There have been 2 requests thus far for bars that would meet the 2022 statute at this time. And we would want to see if we could encourage that business downtown by increasing the square footage that's required without negatively impacting downtown. And also, I would be in favor of looking into the city as well, because I know that there is a certain sector of the population, young adults, that would like to have some place to be able to have a drink after work, a nice, mature establishment to be able to enjoy spirituous beverages that without going downtown and maybe being a part of that crowd. So I think if we can do it responsibly, it's not too much of a burden on our public safety, and it adheres to our city ordinances, then I would be in favor of it.
Okay. With that ends the questioning, and we will move on to the closing statements. And we will start with Mr. Bell.
All right. Thank you very much. So just one more reminder, I have a website that is available for more information on my platform. It's tough to cover it all within 30 minutes. So my website is bell4gvl.com. That's bell4gvl.com. Again, my name is Will Bell, and I'm asking for your vote for the Greenville City Council at large seat. I served 6 years on the city council and have a record of low taxes and would like to bring that back to the city council. I'm a father of 3. I've got a 4-year-old son and 2 4-month-old twins. Married to my college sweetheart, Larkins. We've been together 13 years now. She is a Greenville native, and I've been in Greenville since 2011. Small business owner, employee for a multinational company that works in the spirits and wine distribution business, and have a lot of hands-on experience serving in our community, but also dealing with complex issues as it relates to business and the intersection of government. I appreciate, again, IBX Media and the Daily Reflector for hosting us. And again, Councilmember Willis, thank you so much for participating in this. And regardless of which one of us wins this election, I'd like to see us both stay involved, whether that's on a committee or whatever it may be, because I think we're both in it for the right reasons, and really appreciate your perspective and also you being involved here. So thank you very much.
Ms. Willis.
Yes. So everything rises and falls on leadership. That's a quote from John Maxwell. But I also would say that the best predictor of future leadership is past leadership. In 2023, the citizens of Greenville made a clear choice that the direction that we were going in was not the direction that they were going to advocate for, and they made a different choice. They made a choice for change and voted me into office. And since then, we have worked so hard to change the trajectory, to change the direction that Greenville was going in, just when it comes to listening to people and representing people. And I'm so proud of the work that we've been able to do. We're going in the right direction. And it would be my privilege and my honor to continue going in the right direction. If you want to learn more about me, then you can find out information on PortiaWillis.com. And I'm asking for your vote, either in early voting on November the 4th, to continue serving as Greenville City Council member at large. Thank you again to the organizers of this opportunity, and I will see you out there in Greenville.
Thank you. This concludes our forum with the candidates for the at-large seat on the Greenville City Council. Thank you again to Will Bell and Portia Willis for your participation. To our audience, thank you for watching. Today's questions are ripped from the headlines of the Daily Reflector, so please keep reading and stay informed. And remember, early voting runs October 16 through November 1, and Election Day is November 4.